We are here now with our at-large candidates. So welcome everyone back. So I'm Steve Leone, I'm publisher of the Concord Monitor, and I'm here with Michaela Tofigi, who is one of our reporters. So first I just want to do a quick introduction. Down the line, at-large candidates, Nathan Fennessy, Taylor Hall, Matthew Hicks, Judith Kurtz, and Kevin Porter. I'm going to give each candidate 90 seconds to just introduce yourselves, tell us why you're running, and we will start, right now we'll start with Nathan Fennessy, and just when we call on people, just go that way and then come around, kind of like, musical chairs.
Thank you. Thank you to the Monitor. Thank you for the school district for hosting us tonight. As was just mentioned, my name is Nathan Fennessy. I'm currently one of the at-large counselors. I was first elected in 2019. I've lived in Concord for a little over 10 years now with my wife, Caitlin, and my 3 boys, Connor, Patrick, and Sean. I'm an attorney at Pretty Flaherty downtown. I am running because I want to continue to make Concord a desirable place to live, work, and raise a family. To do that, we need to continue to focus on economic development, increasing the supply of affordable housing, and not losing sight of our investments in both public safety and infrastructure to allow future development. Thank you.
My name's Taylor Hall. First, want to thank the Concord Monitor, Concord TV, and the high school for hosting this event tonight. So I've lived in New Hampshire for 10 years this month, been a resident of Concord since 2018 and a homeowner for 2 years. I love our city. It's a great city with a lot of opportunity. The reason that I'm running, this year, this election cycle, we're seeing a lot of change in our city government. A lot of seats are open. There needs to be somebody that is focused on keeping our government running as efficiently as possible, that can focus on making sure that our services are provided and that there is somebody to be the voice of the resident of Concord.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to Concord TV and the Monitor and Concord High School, my alma mater. I don't think I was ever on this stage as a student here, but I am now. So, my name is Matt Hicks. I am a lifelong resident of Concord. I live in Ward 10, which is East Concord. I have served on the planning board for about 12 years, and by extension, the Regional Planning Commission. I serve in the State House in the U.S., in the U.S., not yet. For the House of Reps, representing Merrimack 24 or Ward 10, and I serve on the Municipal and County Government Committee. So I bring that experience and a lifelong knowledge of Concord to give back in a way that I think I could put my knowledge and my experience to good use for the city. You will hear me talk a lot about housing. It's what I work on in the House. It's one of the biggest issues we have in the city and impacts so many other issues that we have. So you'll hear a lot about that.
Hello, my name is Judith Kurtz. Thank you to the Monitor, to the high school, and to Concord TV, and to my fellow candidates for this opportunity tonight. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to be here and to be a candidate for City Council at large. I grew up in a small town surrounded by hardworking farmers and middle-class folks like my own parents. I was one of 5 children raised on a single income. And despite the challenges that my family faced, which were real and present in our everyday lives, service to the community was something that I was raised with. That commitment to giving back to the community is a value I've carried with me as my husband and I have lived around the Northeast, and it's why I am running for public office. My husband and I chose Concord to put down roots with our 2 children, and we have made this our forever home. In my professional life, I was an educator for 17 years, a classroom teacher, and then a school librarian. When I left working in a school 2 years ago, I used my time to become more involved in the state and city. As a volunteer with Concord Green Space Coalition, I've put my research and consensus building skills to work as we've advocated for smart growth, equitable development, local climate action, and community engagement here in Concord. Through this work, I've met many of the hardworking and intelligent Concord residents who make this city so special. As a councilor, I will continue collaborating with elected officials and community members, strive to break down barriers to civic engagement, and hold myself accountable to you, the constituents, as I work to be transparent and strive to build consensus around the issues that affect us all. Thank you.
Well, good evening, and thank you again to our hosts. My name is Kevin Porter. I've lived in Concord since 2014. It sort of feels like longer than that. My wife is born and raised here, so I've been visiting here for about 20 years. She was a graduate of Concord High School as well, and now is a physician at Concord Hospital. And we have 2 boys that we're raising here that attend Krista McAuliffe School. For about 20 years, I've worked in what are called CDFIs, Community Development Financial Institutions, which were sort of born out of the civil rights movement to expand access to credit in markets that were not met by the traditional channels for affordable housing, small business, and that sort of thing. I work for a national organization based here in Concord called Rock USA. We spun off from the work started at the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund to take the model of resident ownership of manufactured home communities or mobile home parks nationally. And we've grown tremendously in the last few years, which is very exciting to see that work really expand from what started here in the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. I was also an energy efficiency lender for a number of years, and building off of that, served on the board of Clean Energy New Hampshire for 6 years, including 2 years as vice chair. And I think housing and energy are so critical right now, both nationally and locally. So I see an opportunity to take my 20 years of experience and training and apply them to help move our city forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let's get started, and let's kick off with a topic that seems to be on everybody's mind. We're living at a time where vacancy rates are 0.5% in the county. Starter homes are frankly unaffordable, unattainable for many young people. Now, we're starting to see a lot of new developments in every corner of the city, from exit 13 to exit 17, potentially Steeplegate Mall. We have the Langdon Street development, on down the list. And for the most part, that's been a rah-rah, let's go, we need development, we need more places to live. But we're starting to see a lot of people coming out and saying, you know what, maybe we're going too fast. They're concerned that it'll impact our infrastructure systems like roads and sewer and water. Some may just want Concord to be not more populated. They just don't want it to become a congested city. What do you say to those folks that are concerned about Concord that they've chosen to live in changing in a very small, short period of time? Yes, Nathan, why don't you start and we'll kick it that way.
So, I think it's very exciting. The latest number, I think it was in an article this week where Matt Walsh mentioned that there's about 3,000 units potentially that could come online in the next 5 to 7 years. So that's just a drop in the bucket for the housing vacancy issues that we have. We're not going to solve a state issue in the city alone, but I think it's important that we take important steps to do what we can to do that. In order to support those number of units coming online, we're going to have to make investments with respect to infrastructure. We're looking at potential upgrades we're going to need to do to support development on the east side over by the mall. Those are things that we've known are coming down the road, and I think it's a worthwhile investment to support the type of mixed-use development that's being proposed. We're probably going to have to invest additional resources into public safety, police, and fire. If you bring 3,000 more units online, that's going to be more calls for your fire department. So it's a mix, it's a balance. I mean, I think overall, it's really important to, number one, increase the housing supply, but number two, increase the commercial property tax base. We also have to understand that will involve some additional costs associated with it. I think those are costs that we should, I think they're good investments. And with respect to public safety.
So with respect to housing, I think that it's very important that we do have housing available for people. I think that it's very exciting that we are in a period of growth, but you have to look at growth overall. Controlled growth. You can't have all these housing units come online without the infrastructure to support them, whether that's the actual physical infrastructure or the underlying businesses or employers to support bringing in all these new people. So I think we need to look at, controlling this growth and making sure that we have jobs, opportunities for these people that are coming in, and balance the amount of housing with our projections. Again, investing in infrastructure, these are all good things that do pay dividends in the long run, but we also need to look at the needs now and in the future of the city.
Yeah, this is an important question, and I think the first thing we need to look at when we look at this is housing is a key to so many of the issues that we face, whether it is looking for employees, attracting businesses, helping with the homeless population and getting them in housing. This will change our city if that is an accurate number of 3,000. I mean, you think about the population impact if it were to be built. And I think we're going to have hard conversations about what type of city we want to be in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The population of Concord has only increased about 12,000 people in 40 years since I was a kid here. So I think that these are bigger questions. Infrastructure is going to be important. I agree with Nate that we are going to have to spend some money if we have this. But when you're looking at a median price for a single-family home in New Hampshire being $480,000 and $385,000 for condos, according to the New Hampshire Business Review, my 20-year-old daughter, when she graduates high school in a few years, will not be able to live in the city of Concord. I was fortunate enough to be able to rent early on and then buy a home 5 years after that. I don't know how that is possible right now. So increasing the supply of housing is important for that, but it does come with added costs of a different city, infrastructure improvements. So it's a complicated question, and there is no single answer to this question.
Thank you. I believe the question was in part about what we would tell residents who fear the growth of the city. And I think that we have to start with acknowledging that that fear is real. People love where they live, and they have the reasons that are decades old, and for some families, generations old, about what they hold near and dear in Concord. So I think listening, first of all, and trying to make some sense of what they do hold dear so that we can try to hold fast to those things that we value about Concord while reckoning with the reality that change and population growth are happening. And if we can have those conversations and help people to see that perhaps they won't actually lose something, that perhaps creating affordable housing and addressing homelessness can lead to a return to a vibrancy that they may have loved at an earlier time in their Concord life, that we can dispel some of that fear. So everything that's been said about the need for affordable housing is real. We need those units. Everything that's been said about investing in infrastructure, I support. We need that. We need public safety to keep pace with population. But I think we also need to really reach out to the residents who are resistant and acknowledge that it's coming from a place of a fear of loss, and help them to help us understand what we need to maintain in Concord to help them feel safe here.
Well, I certainly agree on the balance and appreciating folks' concerns and meeting those and acknowledging that they're real. There are a few things I would point to. I think repurposing underutilized commercial space is key. Steeplegate Mall is a very large example of that, but I think there are numerous much smaller examples of how that could be done within the city. If you look around downtown and see whether it's vacancies or properties that could be where infill could occur, I think that's a huge opportunity. Also, having worked on housing issues around New England for 20 years, small multifamily is really what we have here, and I think we should really acknowledge and leverage that. It really fits in with the character of the community. The problem is it's really harder to make the numbers work. Every dollar of development cost is that much harder to absorb. So I think we need to find ways to be innovative and find ways to keep those costs down for those small projects, and also be innovative. I mean, think about shared equity housing. I heard someone talking about congregate housing Acknowledge that people at different point in their lives want or need different types of housing, and that is more than just a single-family home or an apartment building. There's a lot more we can be thinking about and implementing.
Great, thank you. I actually do have a quick follow-up, and I was wondering if we could just do this in, 30-second limit for each answer, and we'll start with you, Nathan. This is, at-large candidates, which mean you represent all corners of the city. What parts of the city do you think are most in need of new housing? Like, what are their priorities?
I don't know that I have any particular choices. I mean, I think there's a lot of great projects that are being proposed for different parts of the city. So, Exit 13, Exit 17, we've got out by the mall. I mean, I think at least, or Pennacook, we got Pennacook Landing that just got done. We've got some out on Sheep Davis Road. So from my perspective, there's actually a very good balance of where these projects are being proposed because they're in all different parts of the city. And I think that's really important from my perspective.
I agree with Nathan. I think it's important that we look to all parts of the city, not that there's any specific one area where you want to concentrate the housing, but you want to have projects in various areas. And you want those projects, I think, more importantly, to match the character of the neighborhoods that they're in. So I think, the city's doing a good job working with these projects to make sure that they fit the character of where they're going.
So we do have good balance in the applications, in the housing construction that's going on right now. I think, being an East Concord native and having the development monitor way, this is a great project, and I'm telling my neighbors that this is necessary and it's good for our neighborhood. And yes, we are going to have to adjust to having a different neighborhood, and that's okay. We cannot continue to congest new housing in areas that are already congested. We have to spread this out, and it's happening now, and that's the way we're going to have to continue to do it to be equitable citywide.
I share the other counselor's sense that, or excuse me, candidate's sense, I've put the cart before the horse, that that there's balance in the proposed projects, and I think that's exactly right. I also agree with Kevin that we need to look at infill. So looking at spaces in the city that are already developed but sitting unused, and then redeveloping them and updating them. I think what's really important, along with looking at where housing is that we really make infrastructure such as public transportation keep pace with these projects. For example, Pennacook Landing and the wonderful new Market Basket, folks can't take a bus there yet, and I know that that's coming, but they've been waiting nearly a year. So it's wonderful to build housing, but if we don't keep pace with creating accessibility to services from that housing, then we aren't maintaining balance in the city.
Well, I think every neighborhood's different. For more rural parts of Concord, maybe it's converting a barn into an accessory dwelling unit. Downtown, again, that infill that we spoke about, in the former industrial corridors of Concord, it's a different approach. I think getting public input early on and making sure people are heard and have a voice in that process is really key, no matter what neighborhood it is.
Okay, so housing and homelessness go hand in hand, and homeless encampments populate all 10 wards throughout the city. Oftentimes when a camp is moved, it ends up being another neighborhood's problem. So as an at-large counselor, how would you find a citywide solution to addressing homelessness? And Taylor, we'll start with you for this question.
Okay. So, as I've said, there's no easy answers to the homelessness problem that we have in the city. I think that, as it was mentioned earlier during the mayoral debate, we need to work with our city organizations to intervene early. People that are at risk of homelessness, we need to work with the organizations in the city to prevent that. Outcomes are better when you can prevent somebody from being homeless. But as far as the camps that are already here, that are already established, I think working with our public safety and our public services to begin to break up those camps, to be able to offer services when they're needed, but have them move along, I think are steps in the right direction.
I think our ultimate goal is to not have people being forced to live in the woods or wanting to live there, but to be in a shelter of some sort. Supply is certainly a huge piece of that, so we will have to increase the supply. What are the root causes? There are people in the community right now who are doing an excellent job. The coalition is doing a fantastic job of outreach and getting to know the population, find out why people are in these situations. Once we have some of those answers and we know these people by name, we will be able to start making some real impacts. This is also something that we should look at as more of a county-wide solution. Homelessness isn't just a Concord problem, it's a state and national problem, and if we don't look at it more globally and how we can work with our county partners and also more statewide, then I think we're going to struggle to solve this problem. So I think to your point about moving camps moving from one section of the city to another, this is where we can't have a not in my backyard approach to this. We really have to look at this as a community-wide situation and create and find housing for these people.
Thank you. As mayoral candidate Kate Wist spoke so poignantly to in the last forum, community and personal relationships have to guide our policy work when we're talking about our unhoused population. At the last city council meeting last month, the Homelessness Steering Committee made a presentation as the community had requested, and some great things were shared in that presentation about collaboration between outreach workers from several of the nonprofits, improved connections with Concord Hospital and Riverbend, and the involvement of Officer Moulton from the Concord PD, who by all accounts is collaborating really beautifully and with great effort with CCH and CAP, trying to give outreach workers a first shot at working with unhoused individuals when the Concord PD encounters them. And it is a great start, but we can do more. And this sort of global look, a holistic view of the issue rather than a ward by ward look, is exactly what at-large counselors can help do by working with the immediate concerns that come from ward counselors and also trying to look at systems to help us gain some headway on the problem. I'd like us to look at how we engage developers and landlords. We know that it's difficult for them, or at least unappealing for them, to create units for low barrier placements for unhoused individuals. And we also need intermediate housing that is affordable to prevent individuals from falling back into homelessness. We need to have these difficult conversations with them and figure out how as a city we can incentivize that kind of housing development. I'd also like us to look at regional or county committees, because while we see the homeless individuals in Concord, we know that they are here because they need some services, and so we can look at county-wide solutions. I think we need to take the lead in really addressing this creatively and engaging all the community partners.
Right, well, I think public safety is, of course, paramount. I have 3 generations of firefighters on my mom's side of the family. I've seen the toll that the situation in the last 20 years around the country has taken. We need to recognize how much strain that's putting on first responders and make sure they have the resources that they need. I think the social worker approach shows innovation and compassion. I'm very eager to see how that plays out. And then taking it to the next step, one bright spot in the fight amongst homelessness, to address homelessness, has been among veterans. Veterans' homelessness has actually decreased nationally. The reason for that is that a housing-first approach has been taken. This really is a housing supply issue at the crux of it. We need to make it easier to build housing. The lack of housing is causing harm to people. It's causing financial, emotional, physical harm in some cases. So I think we need to weigh that versus the layers of regulation and administrative burdens that exist to build housing. I'm sure some of these regulations are required and do protect people in the community. Some I'm not so sure. So again, I really think we need to take a look at that and weigh all of the costs and benefits. I think one other thing is kind of the missing middle of housing. There are resources and subsidies available for deeply affordable housing. There's been a lot of high-end housing that's been built, but the missing middle is a big piece of it, and that will affect people across the housing spectrum and relieve pressure on everyone.
So we're looking at right now 448 individuals in Merrimack County is the current census of people who are considered unhoused, and about 100 of those are unsheltered. Everybody has a different story as to how they ended up there. A little more than 250, I think, are considered permanently homeless. There's no one solution, but I've been really impressed. We had a great presentation last month from the steering committee. The effort that they've made, the effort that they're making to go out and speak to these individuals, get information, get resources, services out to them has been really impressive. One of the things that they've managed to do is, with respect to the rail yard, is to get a commitment that 10 of those units are going to be dedicated to people coming out of homelessness. So once that individual moves on to a different placement, they're going to take another person in who's coming out of homelessness. That's going to make a huge improvement. Now, does that get all 100 people? No, not immediately. But little by little, if we can continue to do that with other developers who are building affordable units in the city, I do think we can make an impact. I would echo what Matt said, that this isn't just a Concord issue. It's really important for us to work with the other committees or other communities around us, as well as the county and the state. We could get to net zero if another person never showed up here. But we all know that because there are so many services here in Concord, like the Friendly Kitchen, we've got a prison here. So there's a lot of people who end up here because of those things. And we can't do it all by ourselves. We can make a big impact. I think we've done so. We've continued to work on that, but we're not going to be able to do it all by ourselves.
Thank you all. Now we're going to switch topics and talk about diversity within the city. So last year, city councilors began to discuss plans to addressing city diversity on committees and boards before Mayor Boulay presented his own plan for a DEIJ committee. Would you follow the mayor's plan, or would you encourage the council to rethink their approach to addressing city diversity? And then as a second part to that question, would you support stipends to broaden the scope of who can serve on all government committees? And Matthew, we'll start with you for this one.
Great, thank you. So diversity is one of Concord's greatest strengths. When growing up here, this was not a diverse city at all. And coming back here after college, that was one of the things that concerned me, is not being a more diverse environment. I think that we really need to work to diversify our boards, but I don't think that we should force an issue because it won't be authentic. We have to help people understand how the city works. It takes a long time to figure that out. If you join the planning board, it'll take a few years. And we can do that through getting more active in the community and moving, I've talked about this before, moving meetings around the city so more people can have access to the meetings and learn how the system works. And then we can seek people out who may be interested, help teach them how it works, and then get them involved, and then they will be successful. But it's incredibly important that there is representation on all of the boards in the city. I do not support paying people to serve on boards. I think there are other ways to go about helping them, whether it is talking to employers, whether it's helping with transportation or babysitting or whatever it may be. I think there are other ways to do that rather than using tax dollars to do that.
I understand the resistance to paying people to serve on boards. New Hampshire has a long tradition of public service and volunteerism. I also know that we need to look at the barriers to engagement, and that a financial barrier is a very real one for many people living in Concord. And if we want to know how to improve Concord for the exact populations that we've just been discussing in terms of affordable housing, those on the verge of homelessness, and perhaps even older and aging community members who fear losing their homes as tax rates increase, we have to think about how we get other people to the table and how we bring the table to them. So I'm not ready to say today that I vote to pay people, but I will seriously consider what it would take to actually engage all Concord residents and let them know how to participate in the civic process. This election is a great cycle because we've seen more people talking, more candidates running. That's a sign of a healthy democracy. That's the kind of engagement and enthusiasm that we need to continue to cultivate after November 7th. And there are a lot of ways to do that, but I'm not willing to say I would reject any single idea until I've had time to really sit and talk with the folks who are directly affected and whose voices I'd like to bring to the table.
Sure, I appreciate the question. There's the Concord Monitor that reported that 14% of people in Concord are people of color, but only 1% of those serving on city boards and commissions are people of color. This is a very stark contrast, and I think it needs to be addressed. And this is not altruism. Diverse groups produce better outcomes and make better decisions, so we need to take action. It's very easy for somebody who looks like me, a tall white guy, to sit up here and say, please be patient, please give us time. It is well past time. We should take action. On the issue of stipends, as my colleague here said, there is a precedent for this in Concord. Let's at least talk about it. Some people may not even take us up on it, but let's have the conversation. Let's do what it takes to get more people represented in city government.
So I was one of the councilors who voted for the budget, which involved appropriations for a consultant to work with our diversity committee. And that was one of the recommendations that we got in our listening sessions, was that we really need to bring a consultant to work with us to come up with the formation of what we wanted to do. I don't support taking that money and paying individuals who are part of one committee as opposed to the hundreds of other people who volunteer their time for the community. I don't think that's a good idea. I think, you know, with respect to whether or not the diversity committee should go according to exactly what Mayor Boulay thought it might be, you know, we're gonna have a new mayor in a few months, and I'm sure whoever that might be is gonna have a different idea about what it should look like and what we should do. But I think we too often lose sight of, you know, the things that we have been doing. For example, city manager's we've got a contract which was approved by the council with Circle Works, which is making an intentional effort to try and attract diverse candidates anytime we have an opening in city government. That's a step that we decided to do as a council after we had a meeting with a consultant and started to look at ways that we could make a better effort to attract and retain diverse candidates. So I think there are a number of things that I expect the diversity committee will work on, but I don't think the form that it's going to take is still decided.
I'm a very firm believer in getting the best people in the role. That being said, I think that we need to have people that represent our community in these roles, and these are not mutually exclusive. We can have our public servants that are representative of our community and start meeting some of these diversity goals. And we can definitely take more strides to do that, while also making sure that we have the best people in place to make sure that we run an effective government. As far as the stipends are concerned, I am opposed to that. To Judith's point, we are a very strong volunteerism state. We don't want a professional politician class. I think that you know, keeping that money out of it. If you're really dedicated, you find the way. My mother raised my brother and I and still found time to participate in multiple boards while balancing raising us, her job, multiple other things. So I think the people that really genuinely care find a way. It's not about the money.
So we've heard a lot tonight about, you know, Concord as a city on the rise, you know, a great future ahead of it. And of course, a lot of that is really dependent on getting a lot of really good jobs in the city. And that's, you know, we've always talked about marketing the city regionally and even across the U.S. as a great place to do business. Recently, the city had an economic development director, but it no longer does. Is this position needed? And has the city done a good enough job in drawing in new business? And I think we will start with Judith.
Great, thank you so much for the question. I recently had a chance to sit down with the Chamber of Commerce and talk about some of these issues, and I think we definitely need to lean into drawing on professionals, whether it be in the form of a single employed economic development lead, or in leaning into our chamber and creating an economic development advisory committee to find out how we best serve Concord. We can do a lot of different things by capitalizing on the very successful Main Street revitalization. We can take a look at the second story there, and while it's not a ton of space, we can draw in businesses that don't need the foot traffic but would like to function in downtown. We also need to look at the industries that we currently have and reach out to adjacent businesses that can benefit by being located here. I would absolutely support some establishment of professionals in this industry who can help us figure out how to capitalize on what makes Concord special and the areas where we can best grow. I'd also just like to say that I think we have a lot of untapped potential in Concord as a tourist destination. We have so many folks who drive through Concord and past Concord on their way to destinations north, and it drives me personally crazy that they don't stop to buy lunch here. We can lean into creating a safe and welcoming landing space for folks who are just passing by to spend their money here without deeply changing the character of Concord. We can lean into the charming downtown. We can lean into a beautiful riverfront that we are just making plans to develop. And I think we will see a return on those investments.
Sure. Well, marketing 101 is that you need to be consistent. And I think one thing that's been lacking is a consistent vision and a consistent marketing plan for Concord. And whether that's an individual, that's an economic development personnel, or a public-private partnership, which would be my preference, I really think we need to figure out how we want to market Concord. And there's a lot to offer. I mean, the music and arts, downtown. I was at a tech event last week, a launch event, which was absolutely incredible, seeing the kind of businesses that are starting and growing here. And I think that's another huge opportunity. We're located in between Manchester and Dartmouth and UNH and the Seacoast. Huge opportunity to leverage that and be in the mix with everything going on with the tech sector and biotech and all of that. Personally, I'm a big fan of the music scene here in Concord. Love some of the venues here. I think there's an opportunity to really leverage that and our other local artists to bring people into the community for some arts-based tourism.
So in the budget this year, we took the position that currently existed for the Economic Development Director, and we used it and created two different positions. We've recently hired one of those positions. So from my perspective, I would like to see how that individual performs and how that works over at least the next year before I make any decisions about whether we want to bring back an Economic Development Director or not. From my perspective, one of the challenges we face is we don't have a lot of space for a new greenfield project for big manufacturing or industry. So we have to work with what we have. I'm personally most focused on the state dropping that parking garage over Store Street so that we can create a second Main Street on Store Street. You've seen part of it now with the 110 Grill, getting Brixmore to move that onto the street. And I think moving forward, we want to see that continue all the way down Store Street. Ideally, when the 93 expansion takes place, we're going to be able to tie in from the Merrimack Greenway Trail across the Loudon Bridge right into downtown. I think that's going to be a huge economic driver for us. And just to push back on this narrative that nobody stops for lunch, I work downtown. Every day there's license plates from Rhode Island, New York, Connecticut. So people are stopping. Now, the goal is to make them stay for longer than just lunch.
So I agree that we as a city do need to work on economic development further. I believe that the public-private partnership model would be the best model. But first and foremost, we do need a plan. The city needs to work with the Chamber of Commerce, other stakeholders to say, this is our economic plan. These are the industries that we want to work on attracting here and create out an overall cohesive plan. Do we want tourism? Do we want high tech? And then working towards that, working towards attracting people. You know, if we want to go in the tourism direction, how do we get them off the highway? If we want to go in the high tech, how do we get those businesses here? Where do we put them? Where do we put the people that they're going to be hiring? But I do think it's very important that the city spends more resources on economic development and fostering a public-private partnership.
Absolutely, we need to increase tourism in the city of Concord. So because the economic development director position didn't work, it doesn't mean that we don't continue to explore that option. If we don't invest in a position or in positions in order to get some sort of return on that investment, we won't have people here. The state of New Hampshire does a great job of promoting the state of New Hampshire. I see advertisements for towns and cities around the country. Concord is an incredibly desirable place. The river, the trails, I agree about the music. If you see Lyle Lovett and Leo Kottke, an absolute gift to see them play the other night, and the Indigo Girls are coming. There's the Red River Theater. We have wonderful things here, but people don't know about these things. We are going to have to invest some money, and as Judith said, we can get a return on this investment, and I think it's going to be fantastic. The Opportunity Corridor, we fought really hard with 110 Grill to make sure that that faced the street. It was kind of a battle, but we pushed for that because we knew that's what we wanted in the city, and it is already paying off. People love that plaza, and I agree. I tried to get into the Common Man the other day, and it was full on a Wednesday at 2 o'clock, and most of the plates are out of state. So people are here. They just need to stay a little bit longer.
Thank you. Now we have a reader question about accessibility. Citizen engagement is critical to the City Council's ability to function. What specific barriers do you think there are currently to citizen participation, and how would you eliminate those barriers if elected? We'll start with Kevin.
Well, I think one thing is looking at the process by which folks are appointed to city boards and commissions. Currently, these are appointed unilaterally by one of two people. There's no oversight of this process. There's no review of this process, and I think that's one thing that led to those numbers that we mentioned before. I think outreach is also key. People may be intimidated or may be confused about what different city board or commission positions entail. So I think breaking down those barriers is another key avenue. And we heard before about transportation and language. I would also support efforts in those areas.
So during COVID, I was one of the people who suggested we should move around the meetings and not just do them in City Hall chambers, go to the Heights, go to other places around the city so that there was an opportunity for people to come if they didn't want to venture too far. I think that's still a good idea. I know that there's some concerns about the impact of accessibility through Concord TV if we move around. But when I served on the school board previously, we would do at least a meeting a year over at Millbrook or someplace else. Certainly when we did the budget, we would do that. So I would say that that's one of the things that I certainly would consider. With respect to accessibility to boards and commissions, generally the way that those work, as I understand it, is that the mayor and the city manager have the opportunity under the charter to appoint individuals. Often they will consult with the ward councilor about people that they know in the community who might be a good fit, and then the nominations go to the full board. The public has an opportunity to provide comment on that at our meetings, and then a vote is made. So certainly we can do perhaps a better job of intentionally seeking out people, but I think it's also important to remember that there are lots of different types of diversity. So I had an individual point out to me that this location was not ideal for someone who struggles to walk up, stairs, which I agreed with. So it's thinking about those sorts of things as well. There's many buildings that perhaps have elevators, but we need to do a better job of making them available and letting people know how to access them.
So I agree with what everyone else has said about the accessibility. City Council does need to do a better job actively making an effort to meet our residents where they are. Spending time doing outreach, going to our community where they're at. I think it would be great to be able to go to some of the businesses in the Heights and spend time, let them know, City Council will be here in an informal setting, the way that we have the coffee with the cop, and just get to know people, not in a as formal setting. So maybe it takes away some of the stigma of the actual formal City Council process. I think, transparency also breeds accessibility. So I think that, making sure that transparency goes into the government process is going to help with accessibility. And then, of course, I do also support moving meetings to be able to be in different communities so that it is easier for people to be able to attend meetings.
So I had a quick conversation with the Concord TV folks about how to make this possible, and they said it's possible. We may need to invest a little bit more money in doing that, not much, but we do need to be more present. We need to be more accessible. We need to communicate better. We need better outreach. I think this is incredibly important. As a civics teacher for a long time, there's a lack of understanding about how the system and the process works. We need to educate. Always goes back to education for me. So we need to educate people about what the boards do, about how to get involved, and break down the barriers where they think, I have nothing to offer, I'm afraid of this, I am just whatever they are, and let them know that their input matters, their experience matters, living in the city, what they want to see the city look like. And if we can get more people involved, I think that we're going to see a change in the way that the government works for the people. We are all part of the city of Concord. So whether you serve on a board or you run for elected office or you are just trying to get through the day and the week and the month, right, with raising kids, you're still part of the city and you should have a voice and you should be curious and interested. And if we can break down some of those barriers, we can get more people involved, but we do have to do some of the work to make it happen.
There's an idea in education that an accommodation that you make for the neediest student in your classroom will benefit every child in that classroom. So when we think about how to engage everyone in Concord, we can feel confident that any adjustment we make to location of meeting or time of meeting or transportation to meetings or anything we invest in language accessibility, translation services, or in making the website more accessible, those things will benefit those that we're currently not reaching, and they will improve the process of civic engagement and increase opportunities for all Concord residents. So when we think about return on investment, the greatest investment we can make is in the people of Concord and getting more of them to the table and having broader conversations. So I support all of the ideas that we've heard, and I also would just say that face-to-face conversations are the most powerful thing. As I've been knocking on doors, I've been educating many people about the fact that there even is an election. I've been helping people look at ward maps to understand where they live. Today, I got out my phone and showed how they can figure out how to watch a planning board meeting. Today it was a resident who's lived here her entire life. She's very engaged and was asking me questions about how come she couldn't do these things. She really just needed someone to show her that she could do them. But that kind of outreach and personal communication, that's how we start breaking down these barriers to engagement.
Okay, so we're back to another reader question. And if you were paying attention during the mayoral forum, you may have heard this one before, but there's a reason we're asking it twice is a lot of people are really concerned about property taxes. They keep going up, and we get that the best way forward is to increase the tax base, but when that's not happening, people's tax rates go up, and they would like to know, are there any items in future budgets that could cut back to reduce spending? And Nathan, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll give you two that I would love to be much smaller line items. The first one would be the solid waste. I would love that to be a much smaller line item in the budget. Now, it's not going to be immediately because we're losing the great contract that we had in the next couple of years. But if we work as a community to focus on reducing the amount of waste that we are disposing of, work on composting, work on recycling, that is an item that I would love to have be much smaller in the budget. The second one would be energy prices. Now, we don't have total control over that, given what's going on in the world, but there are steps that we can take with respect to the cost that we pay for energy to try and reduce that through LED lighting. That's one of the things that we've focused on as a city, the sources of energy that we use. So those are two line items that I would strive to have go down every year if I could in the budget.
I would hate to see property taxes go up. I think anyone that lives here, be it renter, homeowner, would hate to see that. I think that the biggest way that we can increase revenue is the city just being a little bit smarter about looking for money. I did a little bit of digging. It looks like the city has over $100,000 in parking fines that are unpaid. Getting that revenue cycled back in. The state continues to pay around $3 million a year for services, which the services we provide to the state far exceed that. So re-examining that, looking at things like that to see, are these still the smartest ways that we have to bring the revenue in? Can we revisit these things? Can we be smarter about the revenue and collecting that? I think would be the best way forward.
Listening to the mayoral candidates talk about this, it's interesting. We provide a lot of services in the city of Concord, and that's one of the things that makes Concord such a great place to live. The purple bags, we talked about this in a different forum. It's a consumption fee, and if we get rid of that, then we are going to all pay an increased cost. Taxes are really high, and as Nate said, energy is also very high, and it strains most people's budgets in the city of Concord, certainly my family's. I don't know how we could get rid of too many of these services without people being concerned that they don't have those services. There are certain things that we are going to have to pay for, and there are some things that we need to pay for, and if we pay for it through our taxes, then that's how we're going to make it happen. I do think the city council has done a remarkable job of keeping the city's tax rate where it is. Certainly, they have worked to cut and to identify areas if they can cut or not spend. But these big questions about Memorial Field and about the golf course and about the police station and about the sewer lines and water lines on the Heights, these are big ticket items, and we're going to have to do some of these things, prioritizing some that are the most necessary for the city. But I don't know what we could cut without sacrificing what we have that makes the city of Concord so great.
What we're hearing from residents is that they feel stretched, right? They fear increasing costs. So one thing that we can do and that the City Council will have an opportunity to vote on is adopting community power, which is a vetted program. It's being adopted rapidly by other municipalities, around the state. And it will provide an immediate reduction in energy costs to individuals and provide the city with an opportunity to build up a reserve of funds that then comes back to the city for general use. So I think we can talk about how difficult it is, and that's true. We can't cut services. We need to feel safe. We need to have roads we can drive on. All of these things are true. But we should look to programs that exist. We don't need to reinvent the wheel to help our residents feel a slight easing where we can provide it. And if you want to learn more about community power, there is a community listening session on November 14th at 6:30 p.m. in council chambers. Representatives from 2 communities who have been using community power and using the 2 two different models will be there to answer questions and speak about it. I went to the previous one and found it really informative. I strongly encourage everyone who has any interest in or questions to attend. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. So I've spoken to hundreds of residents of Concord over the last few months. I haven't met anyone that's really excited about the notion of spending $5 million on a golf course clubhouse. If you're out there, please contact me through my website. I would love to hear from your perspective, but I have not heard that perspective yet. And secondly, we need to be all in on energy. In 2018, I think it was, I approached the city about the LED streetlight conversion program to urge the city to move quickly. Unfortunately, we were very slow to do that. Really, the city dragged its feet, cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. Unfortunately, we're seeing a similar dynamic now with community power. This could be saving people money right now. And if there's something the city of Concord can do to be saving people money, we should be doing it. As Judith mentioned, this is a vetted program. Folks can opt out at any time to mitigate the risk if there are concerns about that. And even if this saves people $20 a month, if you multiply that by 18,000 residences in Concord, this is $360,000 leaving our community every month, and this is completely preventable. We should also be all in on municipal solar. Again, we're on our multiple attempts here. I wish this was done years ago. Solar is now the cheapest form of energy available. I've worked on structuring these projects for years. And again, I think we should be all in on this because it works and it'll save people money and it will save the city money.
Okay, I think we'll start with Taylor on this one. It was a big issue in the past year, Langley Parkway extension. Are you in favor of putting that back in the master plan? Is that right for the future of Concord?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
The Langley Parkway extension.
And I apologize, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. We'll go to Matthew.
Sure, thanks. So think about, so the Langley Parkway extension has been something that I think I've been hearing about for my entire lifetime. I don't know how long it's been on the books. This is something that we have to look at for community safety purposes. If you are a resident of wards 1, 2, 3, Ward 10, and you have an emergency and you need to get to the hospital quickly, this could be life or death. And so when we talk about this, we have to have a conversation with all of the wards in the city of Concord and have input from all of them because this isn't a one neighborhood issue, this is a city issue. So I would be in favor of really studying this again and being part of that, but I also think this is another situation where we have to make sure we get stakeholders from all over the city involved with this discussion and not just narrowly listen to a couple of neighborhoods.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with Matt on this because I was involved in Langley Parkway and we did do the research, and the data shows that the single greatest factor in terms of emergency services and life-saving measures is the time that it passes between the incident and the arrival of emergency medical responders, not the time spent in an ambulance getting to the hospital. There was quite a bit of testimony at City Council about this, and the data bears it out. So if we are concerned about the folks on the north side who are having trouble, what we need to do is return the fire station and the first responders to that side of town. Langley Parkway is not a solution to any existing problem.
Yeah, so this is near and dear. I mean, my wife is a physician at Concord Hospital. When a trauma is brought in, she's often the one taking over. And I agree with what Judith said, and I think this is really a good example of civic engagement. And one thing that led to increased civic engagement was residents being aware of this and taking action. I'll leave it there.
So my focus is actually probably less on the neighborhood and more on sort of the eastern terminus of what would be Langley Park. As most of you can probably see, those properties have not been developed now for a number of years because the property owners are unsure whether we're going to move forward with Langley Park or not. I think we need to have a conversation and make a definitive decision. Otherwise, the eastern end of what may or may not be Langley Park is never going to get developed. And with the improvements that are being proposed, the potential for redevelopment sort of in that area, we want to make sure that we can give some certainty to the property owners so that they can start investing and we can take advantage of what I consider to be relatively prime property.
Okay, so now we have the final question of the night, and with that, a chance for you all to offer your closing statements. And in that, we're hoping that you would answer what makes you different from the other candidates that you're sitting next to. Matthew, we'll start with you.
So to be clear, we are combining, this is our closing statement. Yes. Great, okay, thanks. So for me, I think one of the differences is broad experiences in different areas of municipal boards and other not-for-profit boards that directly impact the complexities of the work that we need to do in the city. As an educator, every day I work with different viewpoints and to build consensus. So that collaborative approach, I think all of us actually would support that. One of the things that I think is the most exciting is that we have 5 people here that are incredibly concerned and dedicated to the future of Concord. So I know I would do a good job on the city council. I think that's been shown in other areas. So if I have the opportunity, I will be happy to work with any of these folks up here. I'm looking forward to that opportunity.
Thanks, Matt. I share your enthusiasm about working with anyone at this table. When I filed to run for city council, I think only Nathan, the incumbent, had filed. So I approached this race not as running against others, but running to offer what I bring to the table. And that is my perspective as a woman, as a mother, as a transplant to Concord, someone who chose to live here and make it my home, and who has thrown herself into learning about the city, the challenges that it faces, and meeting residents all across the city. I will bring to City Council all of my experience as an educator, as a facilitator, and really seek to build consensus and listen and then act to make change that benefits all residents of Concord.
Well, one neat thing about working for a national organization and one that's based here in Concord is you get both perspectives. You get to see how things are done all over the country, but also rooted in a model that was started and grew out of the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund. So I've gotten to see how local government can be innovative and flexible and responsive. And I think there are some real lessons that can be applied here. And also taking an entrepreneurial approach. Even though my employer is a nonprofit, we are a social enterprise using market-based solutions to address some of the most pressing issues of our time. So I'd like to apply that perspective and that experience and that training to help move our city forward. Mm-hmm.
Well, one big difference is I'm the only one sitting at the table that served on the city council. So I guess that marks me out, and that may be a good or a bad thing. I think that's a good thing, personally. I've been through the budget process now 4 times now. I've served on a variety of different committees involved with, from the parking committee to the Recreation Parks Advisory Committee to the ad hoc fee committee that was looking at, the rental fees we were charging at the community center as well as the development fees. So I've gotten a lot of knowledge and experience as to how the city is functioning. I'm trained as a lawyer. Some of you have seen me in action at city council meetings. I'm not afraid to ask tough questions. When appropriate, I'm not afraid to vote, my conscience and vote alone. But I'm also willing, and I have worked with coalitions to get things done. So I think if you're looking for someone who is independent-minded, and the only thing that I try and keep in mind is what's in the best interest of the city, I hope you'll consider voting for me.
So I want to echo what Judith and Matt have said. I think everyone up here has shown that they're dedicated to their community, and Concord is a great community. We are on the verge of doing great things. There's a lot on the horizon here that we have to look forward to, and that's very, very exciting. What sets me apart, I'm one of the hardest working people dedicated to everything that I do. So while I don't have the direct experience that some of the other people up here may have, I want to tackle this job and do the best job because this is my community and I want to see it grow. I want to be dedicated to the residents here and be the voice to advocate for them and leave our community in a better place down the road.
Great. Well, that wraps us up for tonight. I want to thank the candidates. I want to thank Concord TV, Concord High School. We'll be back tomorrow night. We have the ward races and school district, so some more good conversations coming tomorrow. On your way out, help yourself out. We have some Concord monitors. We have an impact report from 2022. We have a new one coming out in December. Tells you everything that the monitor does. So pick those up on your way out and hope to see you tomorrow night.